Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening. It's always a great time for Touchdown in Paradise here in the Finstock Sports Network. I'm Justin.
I'm Russ.
Once again, No Show Joe and Sabbatical Pete are off today, so it's just the two of us. Russ, how's your holiday season going, man?
Oh, it's going good. Just spending time with the family. Got two of my nephews now. So met hanging out with my nephew Benny. He's new. He's a handful. He's always going like a 2-year-old is. He never stops. And then met my other nephew who's only 2 months, so he doesn't do too much. But the 2-year-old is. I went over to my sister's on Sunday, and I was tired when I got back because he's nonstop. He's go all the time.
Well, I'm glad that you're spending time with family. And what I've
Yeah.
learned recently is family time is just invaluable. For anybody out there who hasn't spent time with their family, but they're still in contact with them and still have them around, do it. Just go make the call. Please do, because those are times that you're never going to want to lose. And with that all being said here, let's talk about some of the big news that happened over the weekend. Yeah, some of the games, good, obsolete. But we got to talk about what went down at Radio City Music Hall in New York City on Saturday, don't we, Russ?
Yes, we do, Justin.
We've got differing opinions here, but breaking news, Colorado's DB wide receiver Travis Hunter took home the Heisman in New York City. And he is the first two-way player to do it since Charles Woodson in 1997. Well, Russ, I'm going to start off with you because you have very strong opinions on this and the world needs to hear them.
Well, I mean, I understand on both ways. Like, I understand why he won two-way. It's amazing. It's just if you look at the stats, and I think pretty much everybody on this podcast agrees, if you take Genty off Boise State, they might be a 6-7 win team, and I still see Colorado could win, they could even win 9 games, So, I mean, and if you look back at the previous times of running backs winning the Heisman, his numbers are far better than every other. Derrick Henry was 395 carries, 2,219 yards, 28 touchdowns, where he's got 344 and what he's at 2,499 with 29 touchdowns, or, Ingram only goes for 1658 and 17. So if you're going off that, and like he killed Bush, but Bush was on another level of the way he was receiving. But I'm like, if you're going off that of what he does and what he means, I don't think it's the Heisman's more, what does this guy mean to this team? It's more, hey, this guy might be a future, which even talking to my dad, I'm like, if you look at that Heisman room, not a lot of those guys did too much in the NFL. So maybe they're kind of trying to buck that trend, but I thought Genty meant more to his team. That was just my opinion, but congratulations, Travis Hunter.
I see the argument for both, too. I agree. When you take Ashton Genty off Boise State, they're definitely a winning team, but they're not the most prolific offense. There's nothing so super special about it. They're probably not going to the college football playoff. That's a for sure thing as a bye with the 3rd seed. They're probably not the Group of 5 champion. We probably see Barry Odom still at UNLV going to the playoff. That'd be an interesting shakeout there. Overall, some Heisman rooms have been great. You look at the year Woodson won it. Woodson, Manning, Moss, and then Ryan Leaf. You look at the year that,
Eric
Marcus
Crouch
Mariota won. Marcus Mariota won. It was him, Amari Cooper, and I believe there was one more. It'll come to me.
But you go back to the years where it's like Eric Crouch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where I loved Eric Crouch. I grew up watching Nebraska, but I mean, he did nothing after college. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I thought Genty meant more, but I mean, they both had great seasons. And if you do Hunter versus Charles Woodson, his numbers, offensively double Charles Woodson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you look at when Derrick Henry won, you had Christian McCaffrey in the room right next to him. There's some great years, some bad years. But yeah, overall, I see the argument for both sides. Was there any real chance that Cam Ward had after losing to Syracuse? I don't think so.
That went out the window with that loss. Even though Syracuse is, when 9-14, it's good. Not like it's a terrible loss, but still, those two guys, and we see such a slim margin. So I guess it kind of shows how much the committee was split on it, because that's like you put in your notes, that's the smallest margin of victory we've seen. So it definitely shows how much the committee was split. I mean, like we said, they're both deserving, and congratulations what he does, and I think he's going to be could be the number one pick in the NFL and a great player. See if he plays two ways. I don't know. For me, I don't see him playing both ways in the NFL. Maybe getting some packages. That's my opinion. I don't know what you view on that.
I think 100% he's moving to DB full time. There's no way that he's going to be a wide receiver and DB full time. Now, does he choose wide receiver? That's still up for debate. I still don't think he should have taken home the Biletnikoff Award. That was where I drew the line.
I could see some coaches throwing a couple packages for him offensively, but not. Mm-hmm. And the NFL is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and he's a kid too. Kids have a lot of energy. As you grow older, you take those hits as an adult from grown men. You're not going to have that same athleticism and energy your whole time. So maybe he does try a few different packages his first couple of years, but eventually we see him stick with one position going forward. And like you said, Russ, he did win with the slimmest margin since 2009 when Mark Ingram beat out Toby Gerhart. Hunter won with 22-31 points as compared to Genti, who finished with 2,017 points, only 214-point difference. Now, moving on here, we have some breaking news as a few hours ago here with some notable coaching hires. Russ, Michael Vick, yes, that Michael Vick is going to be the head coach at Norfolk State University in Virginia. Thoughts on that?
I've been driving, so I saw him talking to Virginia Tech for a little bit. I didn't see that coming, but we're seeing now more and more NFL players, getting that opportunity. So we shall see. I don't really have an opinion on it. We'll see how he does.
I've got my own personal beef with Michael Vick for what he did. That was years ago. He served his time. I hope he's learned his lesson, seeing as I don't think he's regressed into that horrible act that he did. I wish him all the best in this opportunity. Hopefully he can turn those young men into grown men like Dion is, if that's what he's really seeking out for this. But on top of that, too, we had some really big news, too, coming out of Chapel Hill, or should I say Chapel Bill. Bill Belichick going to North Carolina. Talk about you go from one very big notable franchise in the NFL to a very notable basketball school in the college athletics that's had a history of football, but not a championship history of football. Does Bill move the needle for them whatsoever, Russ?
I mean, I could see it. I mean, what high school player doesn't want to play for Bill Belichick? But, I was just laughing hearing Brady. I mean, my opinion on it is like, I don't see him wanting to go to some kid's house and talk to their parents, deal with grown men. But I was just cracking up hearing Brady talk about it. He's like, yeah, we don't really know. We don't really want you. You can come here. You might play. We don't really need you, but yeah, if you want to come. I find it hilarious coming from a guy who's got the greatest experience dealing with Belichick. I mean, but what player wouldn't want to play for Bill Belichick? I mean, and he going from one legend to another with Mac Brown and now Bill Belichick.
You replace one old guy who's accomplished so much, the tail end of his career, for another old guy who's accomplished so much, and he's at the tail end of his career. And the question is, go ahead.
I mean, on the check down, we talked a little bit about this, and we cover NFL, and me and Bobby and Dave Stanger were talking, and some guy was like, nepotism at its finest because he's trying to set up Steve. I'm like, do you know any? Like the guy was like, do you know anything about sports? Sports is a lot of nepotism. you can't, like, I worked in sports, and because I didn't play Major League Baseball, it was super hard to get a Major League job, even though I was better than a lot of those guys. But hey, they played the game. They know that's just how sports is run. It's a lot of favoritism. So, I mean, good for him. Setting up his son, who did a phenomenal job at Washington State.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, how does Bronny James get drafted if his dad is not on the Lakers? If his dad's not LeBron James? So moving along here, next one we have, I love this hire here. Rich Rod going back to WVU, getting back to the glory days of when they were led by Pat White and they could outscore anybody except for Pitt. Don't tell them that. Now, we all remember that backyard brawl in 2007. They were so close to being on the cusp of the BCS title game until that game against Pitt, where this was not a good Pitt team. I believe they had 4 wins, and they marched right into Morgantown and beat them, an undefeated WVU team about to get in. Now, that pretty much stirred the end of Rich Rod's time in West Virginia because he went to Michigan right after. 4 years, he about failed there. And then he went to Arizona, your school. So I want to hear from you about that. You saw the highs and lows of having him as your coach.
I mean, I think, after the Michigan debacle, and he wasn't that great at Arizona either, coming off from Michigan, and Arizona probably hiring him because he was at Michigan, and you're not being able to get the players. And then now he kind of, he went to Jacksonville State, had a nice little comeback story, what they won. I don't know what conference they're in. They won that, what he was 10-2. So, I mean, getting back to it, definitely, like you said, with, Pat White and Steve Smith, I mean, it should be exciting. And I mean, that's a big name in West Virginia. So he should be able to get some players who want to come back, who grew up, a lot of these guys that he'll be going after grew up watching that team. He was good. So, I mean, it could be good. And, at least the Big 12 is pretty wide open.
Yeah, it's in need of a blue blood superpower that could come and run it. And we're seeing the changing the guard, Scott Frost coming back to UCF. We talked a lot about last week. I'm curious to see how the new era of the Big 12, if it does even stay as the Big 12, because they were talking about having a corporate sponsor for the name of the conference, what that could be like, and their future with the playoff. Are they going to continue to only get one team in there at most?
We'll see how it goes. I don't know. I'm just focused on the playoffs right now. That's where my mind's at, and this kind of like even Beamer with Shane Beamer. He's like, the playoff just makes all these bowl games irrelevant. I'm not even paying attention to these bowl games anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Why are we still playing bowl games? Just for corporate sponsors to get a quick little paycheck? I'm not quite sure. It used to be a very celebrated thing, but we're seeing the whole landscape of college change. Speaking of bowl games, in fact, Charles Huff, the Marshall coach, hired at Southern Miss. Because of that, they had their entire team enter the transfer portal to go to Southern Miss, and Marshall's had to opt out of their bowl game as a result. So Louisiana Tech is now going to play in their spot in the bowl game. But what kind of precedent does that set?
I don't know. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. I mean, going from a team that won the conference to that, but it's, they probably have more money and more resources. So, I mean, I'm guessing that came into it. It's kind of bizarre and definitely not a great look for the university, but that's just the day and age of college football we're in,
No, exactly. And you think about, too, with I lost my train of thought here for a second.
Don't worry about it. I lose it all the time.
I just got back from a run. Give me some slack.
A run?
A run.
Run. I thought you said Iran. I'm like, geez. I think the NCAA is really going to have to figure out the transfer portal, because we're just seeing these guys bounce from back to back. What is it? Was it Malachi Nelson? He's transferring again.
Mm-hmm.
His second time in 2 years. Aaron Nolan's transferring out of Ohio State.
Is he really? I didn't see that.
I mean, I don't know how great the source is, but I've seen a handful of articles.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
really,
you did yesterday. I completely missed that.
So, I mean, they're going to have to get a handful on that because, I mean, you can't just have one guy be like, oh, I'm not getting playing time. I'll see you. But getting a little outrage. But, Justin, let's get into these games this week. I'm stoked.
Yeah, last piece of thing here, Barry Odom to Purdue. Good luck to him and good luck to UNLV, who just hired Dan Mullen. That'll be interesting. So, yeah, jumping right into the playoff here, Russ. We've got an exciting slate. I'm excited for the playoff. I know you've got your own thoughts about the 12 teams, but I'm excited to see that bracket fully filled out. And this is going to be the new norm going forward, giving more teams an opportunity. Yeah, there's been back and forth. Like, do all these teams really have a chance to win? Yeah, they may be the most deserving, but are they really the best? But real quickly, your thoughts before we go into our parlay.
Well, I mean, I want to, me and you here, I want to dive deep into these. We don't have the two other guys chiming in, so I want to dive into this. My quick thoughts on this is this 12 team really good for college football? In my opinion, I don't know if it's that good for college football. I mean, I think it's kind of diluting the system. I mean, are you telling me SMU deserves it? Clemson deserves to be in this. Penn State deserves it. Tennessee or Ohio State. I mean, in my opinion, I think it kind of dilutes the system, and we'll see how it goes this weekend and in the future. But I mean, I think that's kind of a making of our own fault, where we see in a lot of sports where the fans itself complain, they want more, and then when the more happens, it's not good enough, so we want more and more and more. Like we've seen in basketball where the refs suck, we got to replay, and now we're replaying every player's like this. So I don't know how good it is for college football. I mean, I think it kind of dilutes the system, and like we said, it kind of takes away from the bowl games, which were so great. Is a Rose Bowl, which I grew up with. You didn't grow up with, but now you're California guys. Is the pinnacle? Does it have the same cachet as when you got now we got one game? Not in my opinion. I don't think it's that great.
Yeah, going back and forth on it too. The BCS, some people said, was unfair to all the teams because you had Boise going undefeated all these years, and they never even got a chance to get there. And you had 1 loss, 2 loss. LSU ended up winning it 1 year. But then the playoff, 4 teams comes in, and they're like, see, it's fixed. No controversy whatsoever. Then you get the first year, the Baylor-TCU game that throws everything out of whack. Both teams, very, very good teams. Had TCU not dropped that game, they absolutely would have had that 4 spot over Ohio State, who lost to an unranked Virginia Tech in week 1. But alas, it just made more sense to have the Big Ten champion with their third-string quarterback go in. They end up winning it all. So they made the right choice in the end. Well, we're going to see a lot here, Russ, of is this first year an indicator of what's to come? And if so, how great is the product? How great are these teams really? I remember when we were arguing over TCU a couple years ago when they got in after losing their conference title game. We're all like, yeah, maybe they're not that great. They're winning close. Then they go out there and beat Michigan and look like they're the faster team the whole time. Yeah, the game got close at the end. They still came out on top. And then we saw what happened the next game. Pete and I were there in person. So we ask ourselves, did they really deserve to be there? So let's start off with, did this team really deserve to be there? SMU, Penn State. SMU and Penn State, both losers of their conference title game, both with 2 losses. And here we have Penn State as an 8.5-point favorite. Over-under is 52. Penn State is a home favorite of -310 and SMU plus 250. Not many people remember this, including you or I, who weren't alive this year, but this is the battle of who won the 1982 national championship, because SMU was voted co-national championships with Penn State. according to the Helms Athletic Foundation. They were undefeated in the regular season, 11-1, won the Cotton Bowl 7-3 over Pitt. But Penn State won the national championship after defeating Georgia and Herschel Walker in the Sugar Bowl. Herschel Walker won the Heisman Trophy that year. And here we go. In the first year of the playoff, these teams meet again. So, Russ, give it to me.
Well, I'm really identifying a couple key things for both teams. I'm like, can Drew Aller actually punch it in, take care of the football? Their defense, Penn State's, for me, Penn State's defense is solid. I mean, you kept Ohio State to 13 points. Who did they really play besides Ohio State? But it's going to come down to Aller for me. His passing attack, can he extend the field? And please feed Tyler Warren. I mean, in that Ohio State game, he was the only guy doing anything. Mm-hmm. Get that guy the ball, and you obviously saw he got like 844 Heisman votes. Feed him. SMU, for me, it's going to have to come down. Can Jennings start fast, which we didn't see in that ACC title game? They started off really slow, and I picked it up late, but going up against a Penn State team in Penn State, going to be a whiteout, not a night game, not the same factor, but can they start fast? On the other hand, it's, a whole other conversation. Do they deserve to be there? Does Miami deserve to get that, or Alabama or South Carolina deserve that? But it's going to definitely can get a fast start, because that was definitely just too much of a deficit against Clemson to, come back from.
No, it wasn't too much to come back from, because they did come back from it until the very last seconds. Like, they have 9-10 seconds left in the game. But I see what you mean here. So, what's your call on the parlay?
I'm going Penn State to I don't think they cover. I think Penn State wins. And then I got the under. I think Penn State's defense is really solid.
I like the pick here. I'm going to say this is going to go back and forth, punch for punch, because SMU, they knew very well they were hanging by a thread there, them or Alabama. And so they want to prove, just like their rival across town, TCU, that they belong. TCU proved that they belong by beating Michigan, but then we question it, what happens next? And here, they're given the opportunity. You know that Rhett Lashlee is going to make the most of that, just like he made the most of that fourth quarter against Clemson. They were going to give it their best shot, and they did. They held Clemson, I believe, scoreless until the final seconds of that last quarter, and they came all the way back. Do I think that they could truly keep up punch for punch with Penn State? I'm not fully sure, but I'd love to see it. So I'm going to have Penn State winning, but I'll have SMU covering, and I'm going to go the over, because both teams can easily score. And Penn State's defense, they've been tested. They did play Ohio State, but they also gave up 40-plus points to Oregon. So that was just a couple weeks ago. They've got time to study the film of Penn State's defense now and exploit them how Oregon did. Now, obviously, they don't have the same talent that the Ducks do, but how can they emulate that game plan and figure out a way to get close or pull the upset? Moving along here, Clemson and Texas. Believe it or not, this is the first time these two teams have met, but not the first time these quarterbacks have met. Back in high school, Cade Klubnik and Quinn Ewers, they faced each other in the state title game. I believe it was Westlake for Cade and then Southlake, Carrollton for, I can't even talk, Quinn. They faced each other in the state title, and Cade Klubnik and Westlake came out on top. Now, this is the first time these two schools meet and first time these quarterbacks have met since then. Some of the team from Westlake, those players, they're on Texas now with Quinn Ewers, which makes this all the more enticing. Cade Klubnik obviously coming back to Austin to play in his hometown. So here we go. And Clemson is a 12-point underdog. Texas 12-point favorite at home. 52 is the over-under. And Texas minus 440 money line. Clemson plus 340. I've been going back and forth on this one here, because if you ask me who's been playing better the last couple weeks, it's got to be Clemson. Yeah, they blew the lead to SMU at the end, but they still found a way to prevail. They were just doing what they needed to do to get through the ACC. And Texas, meanwhile, their offense is broken, it seems. Quinn just doesn't look confident in himself. He's not making great decisions. He threw a couple picks in the SEC title game, had to go to overtime. At times, they just look like they're a mess on offense. So I've been going back and forth here. As much as I'd like to say Texas is going to blow them out, I got to be wary of Clemson here. They just feel like they're the hotter team at the moment. I'll still say Texas will win, maybe by a field goal, but Clemson is going to make it very, very tough on them. And a coach that's been there before, Dabo, whereas Sark, who has not been there before in this situation, is a head coach. And I'll take the under here. I think it's going to be more of a defensive battle and Texas money line. Russ?
Well, I identify a few things from both teams. Can Quinn Ewers minimize his turnovers? Because we definitely see he can be a little loose with the ball, a little gunslinger, which could be really big. That turnover margin I'm really looking at because they do have a +2 turnover margin on defense, but are number 83 on offense in turnovers losses this year. So that's going to be big. And I think Quinn Ewers, like you said, he's a little loose with the ball, has that gunslinger in him. You don't really want to do that going up against Dabo, who's got all that playoff, all the experience with the BCS, with the 4 team. So I can see that. Can that defense for Texas contain Klubnik is going to be a big one because you can see he's going off. On the other hand, is Jordan Maffa going to be healthy, who's had that shoulder injury? Because that running game is solid with Maffa and Klubnik. Definitely seeing, Klubnik, he's turning it on this year, and that Garrett Riley offense really picking it up. 3,300 passing yards, 33 passing touchdowns. Can they win in the trenches is my thing. But I definitely identify, can Quinn Ewers minimize those turnovers? Because he's definitely a little loose with the football. I do think Texas wins because it's in Austin, but I do think Clemson covers, and I'm going the over. I think it's going to be a high-scoring football game.
All right, nice picks there. In-state battle here, Indiana, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 7.5-point favorite at home in South Bend. Over-under is 51. Notre Dame minus 285 money line. IU plus 230. We've got our coach of the year on one end, Kurt Signetti versus Marcus Freeman. I saw something today that was pretty interesting. Who would you rather play for in those two coaches? And it was a tough decision, but ultimately I had to go with Marcus Freeman just because he seems like a more fun guy and leader, younger guy with more energy and creates better culture. Who would you go with?
Probably Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably go with Marcus Freeman. A football, younger guy, played football, coached a lot of NFLers at that level. So I'd probably go Marcus Freeman.
So we're in agreement there, absolutely. Now, in terms of this game, Indiana can score. Their margin of victory is 2nd to none on teams not named Ohio State this year. But then you've got Notre Dame, who outside of that Northern Illinois loss, they've looked really good all year. Just rolling over teams, running all over them. Riley Leonard looking like a better quarterback every single week. We all know he's a natural runner of the football. His passing has been so-so, but it seems like he's gotten better progressively as the season's gone on. Russ, who are you taking here?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's stuff I identify on both sides. Indiana's got a really strong rush defense, which might play a big factor because that's the strength of Notre Dame is that running offense. With Jordan Love and Riley Leonard, they're
Jeremiah
obviously
Love?
Indiana is number 1 in the top rushing defense in all college football. So we'll see that. Notre Dame top 10 in rushing yards this year with 224 rushing yards a game. So that'll be a big key. But I also, with Indiana's defense being so solid, that pass protection top 25 in sacks allowed this year with 34 this year. So that's going to be big. And their third down efficiency, they're 87th in the country, is not good. So with Indiana's defense, it's going to come down to how is Riley Leonard? Can he extend the field? Can he make that big play, which we've seen Riley Leonard not do? I do have Notre Dame winning. I do think Indiana will keep it a little closer, but at the end of the day, I think Notre Dame's just more talented. So I do have them winning. I do have them. What is the cover? I think they end up covering. I'm going to say like a 9-point in the over.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good pick. And again, this is just filled with so many good teams. I feel like it could go either way because we've seen how Indiana can score so easily. Notre Dame doesn't let teams score so easily. You saw what they did to the service academies who make it really tough on you. They destroyed them. They completely rolled over them. You saw what they did to USC. Yeah, after it was close, 2 big pick 6s the other way. The Notre Dame defense is for real. And then you look at Indiana, yeah, the run defense, very impressive. And then you look at their own run game too. Is that going to be a factor against Notre Dame's defense? How can that be? We saw Notre Dame shut down the rushing attack of Army and Navy. So how can Indiana utilize Curtis Rourke to the highest degree here? I think just because Kurt Cignetti is new to the Power 5 level and this team is very fun, upstarty, putting together with all the transfers and whatnot, Notre Dame has got the more veteran presence and experience. But Marcus Freeman's also been known to lose big games like this. And that's the other thing. This has got to be the time where he's got to prove he can win, especially against an in-state rival like Indiana, who's an upstart, for those guys to humble the fans out in Bloomington saying, hey, we're still the national brand here in this state. You guys stick to basketball, even though you haven't been good at basketball in 30 or 40 years. So I do feel like it easily could go either way, but I'll take Notre Dame to cover. I say they win by 2 scores at least, and then I'm going to go with the over and Notre Dame money line. And finally here we have Tennessee, Ohio State. Very intriguing matchup because at any moment, both these teams can easily put up 70 points. But at the same time, both these teams can easily put up a total dud of 10 points, 14 points. Here we have Ohio State a 7.5-point favorite at home. The over-under is 46.5. And the money line, the Ohio State minus 290. And Tennessee plus 235. Russ, comments on the game before we pick?
Well, I think this is going to be the best game of the slate. This is my best game of the day. I mean, I've got some on either side. Tennessee's going to have to take away that running game for sure with that solid, one of the better 1-2 punches in college football with Junkins and Henderson. Are they going to be able to get those deep shots? Will Nico Iamaleava get the deep shots? I tried again, Justin. It's probably wrong, but I'm trying. Can he get those deep shots, which is a mainstay in a hyper offense, which we haven't really seen, which they need to, Sampson's going to get his anyway. The guy's a stud running back, but it's going to, I feel for Tennessee, it's going to come down to Nico being able to open up that, take away 8-9 guys in the box because he can't spread the field. So I think that's going to come down to him. Ohio State's going to have to dominate the trenches. It's going to come down to Will Howard for Ohio State. Is he going to be able to make the big plays? Because, as I mentioned, Junkins, Henderson, they're going to get their yards either way. It's going to come down to Will Howard. I don't think Will Howard can do it, so I'm going with Nico. I got Tennessee with the upset. I got Tennessee covering 7.5, and I got the over. Let's go Tennessee.
I love the pick, and I'm going to go and echo that too because I just feel like Tennessee, they've got nothing to lose at this point. They weren't expected to win the national title coming into the year, but here they are in the playoff, and they're playing with house money, whereas Ohio State, it's championship or bust for Ryan Day. He knows that too. He's going to give it his best shot, but we've seen Will Howard come up small in the biggest crucial moments. We saw how he ended the game against Oregon when he decided to slide down with no time remaining. We saw against Michigan when they go for it on 4th down and he can't convert a first down, gives Michigan the ball back. We even saw, like you said, Dylan Sampson, best running back in the SEC. He's going in there, and they let Michigan just run all over them too, albeit without a passing game. Nico can throw the ball is the difference. Look for Tennessee to exploit those holes on defense with the passing attack as well. So I like Tennessee with the upset here. I'm going to go with the over, and I'll take the Vols money line too. All right. And for our stat of the day, I'd really love to do this with Pete and Joe here, but they're not here, so we're going to do it anyways. At the beginning of the year, if you've kept up with us since week 0, we came up with our predictions for who's going to win each conference, starting with our predictions for the ACC. I guessed Florida State. Oh, things that never aged well. And this is probably the worst prediction I've ever made in my life, Russ.
You're right there with Pete.
Pete was right there. We're laughing our asses on the way to the bottom. You, meanwhile, picked Miami. And as close as they got, they just couldn't seal the deal against Syracuse to make the game. Unfortunately, another year goes by and the Hurricanes still have not won an ACC title since they entered the conference. And Joe actually got this one right with Clemson. He was very close to getting it wrong had SMU forced overtime and stopped them. But alas, Clemson came out on top. Good for you, Joe. Congratulations. Next, with the Big Ten. Now, we were all four of us were split down the middle, divided here. And it almost did come down to this if it weren't for that pesky Michigan team. Oregon, Pete and I got right, whereas you and Joe both guessed Ohio State, who unfortunately did not make the title game, but they are going to make the playoff. It was a good guess. I would have picked Ohio State, but I just felt like Oregon, this was their year.
It's up in the air. I think it was very up in the air. It was a good pick on both sides, you know. Mm-hmm. I didn't see him doing it in the first year, but hey, they proved me wrong.
Yeah, it's incredible what Dan Lanning has done. I know they didn't get the toughest of schedules, but they still had to play Ohio State. They still had to play Michigan. They didn't have to really fly way, way east. They didn't have to go to Rutgers or Penn State, but they did have to play Penn State in the title game. So to say that they had an easy path the entire year would just be lying to ourselves because they still had to play the big three, essentially, in the Big Ten.
Well, the next one's pretty funny for all of us.
Yeah, moving on to the Big 12 here, where none of us got even close. I picked Kansas, and although they got hot at the end of the year, they still didn't make a bowl game. Joe picked Utah, who also did not make a bowl game. Russ, you picked your Arizona Wildcats, who also did not make a bowl game. And then Pete either picked Utah or K-State. Utah did not make a bowl game. K-State, they unfortunately lost some games that they should not have. I don't think any of us would have really picked Arizona State at the beginning of the year, right?
Well, don't worry. Nobody picked Arizona State, so that it's not, you know, I went with Tedero and McMillan and Noah Fafita, and I got proven wrong. I guess, you know, Jed Fish leaving really made a big impact. They had no defense, but I don't think I don't really care about it because, you know, everybody and their mama missed on Arizona State this year, so I don't feel that dumb.
Me too. I had a feeling they were going to improve, and people were saying, yeah, maybe they'll have better luck in the Big 12 than the Pac-12. So far, so good. They're in a conference that's very winnable for them, and now they've taken off the fourth seed in the playoff. Then we have the SEC, another one we were split down the middle on, and it did come down to these two teams in the end, Georgia and Texas. Pete and I once again on the same page here picking Georgia. You and Joe on the same page once again picking Texas. This game did go to overtime, and I did have a bit of a nail biter right there as it went to 2 overtimes, and Carson Beck had to come back in with an injured hand.
We'll see what Georgia does. You know, at least they got an extra bye with, you know, Beck's arm. I don't see them winning it all with a second stringer in there.
I mean, it's been done with Ohio State. They did a third stringer. But yeah. Georgia, this is a lot different situation, of course. And then we had the Group of 5 champion. And Russ, I got to congratulate you because you were the here.
That's the one, and I'll take the one I got, and that's the one most obscure. Is I got the Group of 5, and I got a top 3 seed correct. So I'll take that one, Justin. I missed every other one, but I'll take that because that's obscure.
You got it. Congratulations. You picked Boise State when Pete picked Memphis, Joe picked Tulane, and I picked Liberty. Honestly, not all the worst guesses. Liberty didn't do as well this year as I thought they were going to. But Tulane was in the AAC title game, even though they lost a very costly game on Thanksgiving night to Memphis. And Memphis is still a very good team. They did, well, everybody's being Florida State this year, but they did go into Tallahassee and beat their former coach in Florida State. Coach of the year, we all got wrong. In week 0, before I jumped on the Cignetti train, I said Lane Kiffin. Joe picked Mike Elko. Not a bad pick by any means. You picked Kirby Smart, also not a bad pick. And Marcus Freeman was Pete's pick. If he didn't lose that Northern Illinois game, yeah, I think he could have been right there with Cignetti to win it. And now they're going to face each other for the title. For the right to go to the next round. This is a 12-team playoff now.
Can we just say Oregon got screwed with their next round matchup? Notre Dame got screwed because they're going to have to go play Georgia. And then Penn State is just sitting pretty, having to beat SMU and then Boise State. Don't get me wrong. I'm rooting hard for Boise State. That's my team. I want to see Boise State win. First thing, great football, but I also would love it. But Penn State just sitting on pretty easy street right now with SMU and then having to play Boise where, Oregon's going to have to play the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. I'm like, wow, you go undefeated all year and then you get set up for that.
Mm-hmm. Which brings up the point. We need to reseed this like the NFL does. The top seed should get the lowest remaining seed like the NFL. Then the lowest remaining top seed gets the middle remaining seed. And from there, I think it'd be a lot more fair that way.
There's some kinks they're going to have to figure out.
Yep. Unfortunately, it's not going to be this year. And lastly here, we're looking at the Heisman race. Beginning of the year, I picked Dylan Gabriel, and I said, I don't love it. I like it. My instinct was right there because he did make the finalists, but he didn't win. Joe picked Quinn Ewers. That did not go well. Although he did lead Texas to a good season, he's been up and down and injured at times. You picked either Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers.
Didn't go well either.
Yep, Carson Beck was averaging 3 interceptions a game for a good stretch of the season. Now, he won't be a day 1 pick. I think he'll be a day 2 pick at best. Wish him the best. And then Pete picked Jalen Milroe, who at times looked like the best player in the country and at times looked like he was an inept person in making a decision.
I was talking to Joe the other day because he's leaving, so we're hanging out watching Monday Night Game. He's like, is Pete just a walking contradiction? He just bashes Alabama left and right, and then it's like, yeah, Milroe's going to win.
Well, these are our predictions. We have to be objective here.
Pete, Jeff, yeah.
Oh, good point. Yeah, Pete and objective don't exactly go in
No,
sync.
they don't, because Pete, everything
words is not in between. But there's the end of our predictions here. Now for our cheers of the week here. Mine is to health and wellness. I was feeling down and depressed last week. I had a lot going on in life. I'm in a weird situation with my job. But at this very moment, all we can really focus on is how are we doing mentally and physically. And I'm so lucky to have great people in my life who I know who have great resources. I went over to my friend Eric and Natalie's house. Shout out to them, by the way, on Friday and jumped in their dry sauna and then took a shower and then jumped in their pool and repeated that process. And immediately my spirits and soul were lifted and I felt so much better. So thank you both again for having me over. It just means so much to take care of yourself and do good things for your body. How about you, Russ?
Well, I'm going to say Merry Christmas to everybody. Spend time with family. To Justin, Happy Hanukkah. I'm going to give you a little love because I know you're Jewish. We just got the highest contract for a Jewish athlete, Max Fried, signed with the New York Yankees for $218 million, the highest contract ever for a Jewish athlete. So I'm going to give a little love for you on that.
Oh, thank you, Russ. And congrats on the Max Fried signing. And congratulations to the BYU, Jake Retzlaff, for the Manischewitz NIL deal. Manischewitz is a Jewish wine and matzah brand. Just don't drink the wine on campus. And that'll do it. A shorter version here of Touchdown to Paradise tonight on Finns Talk Sports Network. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Justin.
I'm Russ.
And we will see you guys next week for some breakdown of what happens this weekend and what's coming up. See you then.